Part 47. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Xiao. Chapter 479. Chang Wuge got a 5 kill, and his depressed mood suddenly felt much better. He picked up the coffin and put it on his shoulders, then walked down. Su Tong and the others were walking in front without noticing the movement behind them. Only when they walked off the cliff and looked back did they realize that the 5 ghosts of Western Hunan had not followed. Chang Wuhen covered his face with the coffin and said, "They didn't dare to come down. I was embarrassed to force them, so I came down by myself." Gao Zhou and the others didn't take it to heart, but when Su Tong heard this, he glanced at the blood mark at Chang Wuge's feet suspiciously, raised his brows, looked up, and saw the aura of the 5 ghosts of Xiangzi. He had already disappeared, so I could only curl my lips and didn't bother to point him out. The 5 ghosts of Xiangzi could only say that they were unlucky, and that they had no intention of killing them, but their life and death did not matter to him either. "If you don't come down, just wait for death up there." "Humph, I just happen to think they are taking it slow. Let's go quickly and don't waste time." The old man urged them to move forward as quickly as possible, indicating that the road ahead was very narrow and it would be difficult to walk when there were more people behind. "Old man, have you been to this place before?" Gao Zhou followed and asked the old man. "No, I just heard from my family that I wanted to come here when I was 5 years old, but I waited until I was this age." The old man looked at the dark cave in front of him, his expression becoming more and more excited. It was as if he didn't even care about the dangers of this cave. The cave is very dark. Although the water has receded, water drops are constantly dripping from the cave and hitting people's heads. It seems inconspicuous, but it is extremely cold. Even Gao Zhou can't help but shudder when the water drops on the top of his head. Su Tong walked in the front. He had a dark constitution and dark vision. The dark cave in front of him was like a duck in water to him. Observing along the way, I found that the cave was extremely clean. Ordinarily there were so many corpses on the lake bed outside, so there couldn't be more inside. But what is surprising is that when Zhen walked in, he found that apart from the moisture, there was not even a dead fish on the ground. The stone steps under your feet seemed to have been swept by those mysterious hairs, waiting for them to come in. "Brother Monkey, walk slower." Meidu followed behind. "Brother Monkey." "Yes, look, there are exactly 5 of us. We happen to be Sun Wukong, Zhu Beiji, Monk Shat, Tang Sengzai, and Bai Longma. You are walking in front. You are the most powerful, so you are the senior brother." Meidu talked eloquently and pointed at Gao Zhou. "Second senior brother Beiji, the one carrying the coffin is Bai Longma. I'm the best, so I'd better pretend to be Monk Shat." Su Tong looked back and saw that they were indeed right. He immediately became happy and said, "It's just that Tang Monk is a bit old. If the monster eats his meat, I wonder if it will cause stomach upset." "Ha ha ha ha." The two burst into laughter, which made Bai Longma at the back a little unhappy. He glared at Meidu's butt fiercely. If he hadn't been carrying the coffin, he would have gone up and used his treasure to open his eyes. "Senior brother, please slow down a little. We don't have your sharp eyes. It's too dark here." As soon as Meidu's words changed, he took out a flashlight from his backpack. But because the cave is too humid, the light from the flashlight looks hazy. Gao Zhou and Chang Wuju were fine, but Meidu and the old man had a hard time walking. "No, go faster. The time to enter the cave is limited each time, so we have to hurry up." When the old man heard this from behind, he immediately urged him, but his foot slipped and he almost fell to his death. Fortunately, Gao Zhou had quick eyesight and quick hands to pull the person into his arms. Otherwise, if the old man fell down at his age, he might fall to death before reaching the place, and Gao Zhou and Chang Wuge would probably have no place to cry. "Beiji, you are carrying the master on your back." Su Tong said, holding one hand on Meidu's wrist. I'm holding the third junior brother, and the mule behind me should go faster. Su Tong loves acting. It is rare to meet a wonderful person like Meidu, and he quickly got into the role. Oh my god, why is there another one? Gao Zhou covered his forehead, feeling that Meidu, a middle school student, and Su Tong were a match made in heaven. But what else could he do? The boss had already spoken, so he could only obey obediently, carry the old man on his back, and catch up with him. The white dragon horse behind was left with a sulky look on his face. If the old man hadn't poisoned him, he would have been able to take action at this time. I regret thinking about it. Why did I eat that dish? The 5 people walked down the stone steps, and the air below became colder and colder. Head. Gao Zhou came over carrying the old man on his back. Call me senior brother. Gao Zhou. Senior brother, the yin energy in this place is so strong. If we go down further, we will have no problem. Master can't hold on. The old man on Gao Zhou's back had begun to chatter uncontrollably and couldn't even speak. Normally, the clothes the old man wore were not thin, or even quite thick, but down there it was not only cold, but also full of yin. The old man was already old and his yang energy was weak, so naturally he couldn't stand the biting cold below. I have a solution for this. Meidu took out a bottle from the backpack behind him, poured out a few small red pills, took one himself, and then handed it to Su Tong. This is a yin dispelling pill, which is specially designed to restrain the evil qi of yin and cold. If you eat it, you will not be affected by the yin qi. Su Tong picked it up and seemed to throw it into his mouth, but in fact he threw it into the prop book. When he saw that the entry in the prop book was the same as what Meidu said, he felt relieved and fed it to the old man. 1. Sure enough, after taking the elixir, the old man's face gradually began to turn rosy. It's just that if my physique continues to decline, I'm afraid I won't be able to hold on. Fortunately, Su Tong still had a solution for this matter. He took out a piece of yellow paper in his hand. After folding it back and forth a few times, a small lotus flower was folded out. I pulled out a hair strand and made a twister, put it on top, and pinched it casually. Suddenly my hair actually lit up, and it was really like an oil lamp, shining brightly. Not only does it clear away the gloom in front of you, but it also illuminates the road ahead. Hanging lanterns to light the way. Meidu's eyes shone brightly and he couldn't help but said in surprise, this was the authentic 7 skills. Su Tong was quite surprised. He didn't expect Meidu to recognize it. But then I thought about it, it was like seeing a ghost if I couldn't recognize it. Although this was taught to me by my master, it was essentially a unique skill created by someone else. With this hanging lamp, the 5 people continued walking down much faster. After walking for an unknown number of meters, several coffins were gradually revealed on the surrounding walls. These coffins had been soaked in water for an unknown amount of time, but they did not rot. Gao Zhou walked over and studied the coffin carefully, then looked back at Su Tong and said with a joyful smile, the coffin made of dark wood is still buried here. Isn't it already a zombie inside? Then he knocked on the coffin lid. Hey, is there anyone? Open the door and deliver takeout to you. As he said this, he planned to open the coffin and take a look. Meidu and the old man were stunned and thought to themselves, are you crazy? Needless to say, Gao Zhou pulled the coffin open a crack, but as soon as the crack was opened, it was closed heavily with a bang. Meidu and the old man stopped talking at this time, especially the old man lying on Gao Zhou's back. Although it was just a crack just now, he could really see it. The moment the coffin was opened, a skinny hand inside suddenly pulled the coffin back. Although the old man acted like he was coercing the emperor to command the princes, relying on his old life to threaten the great master Su Tong, but when he saw this thing, he said in his heart that he was not afraid that it was a lie. Seeing that Gao Zhou was still interested, he rolled up his sleeves and wanted to dismantle the coffin to see what was inside, so he quickly took his arm and said, "Stop playing and leave quickly." Gao Zhou was feeling proud when he saw that the old man was actually scared. He glanced up suddenly and was stunned for a moment. "I saw a giant dragon coiled on top of the cave above my head." Suddenly Gao Zhou was excited. He rubbed his eyes and took a closer look. Then he saw clearly that it was not a real dragon, but a natural stone wall. It was formed by the erosion of underground rivers for many years. At first glance, it looked like a dragon. "Head, look at the top of your head." Su Tong looked up and said, "Call me senior brother." Immediately after looking at it, he couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise, "The dragon bone clears the way." Lingling Yin Yang Feng Shui map clearly states that the first thing about Yin Yang cave is that the dragon bones clear the way. I didn't understand what it meant before, but now I understood it instantly when I saw the stone wall above my head. I saw strong lines on the stone wall, and the cracked lines were like dragon scales. At first glance, it seemed to be somewhat dragon-shaped. Walk. Now they didn't care about the coffin and walked forward along the keel at a faster speed. It just got darker and darker as we walked. The light from the overhead lamp seemed to be absorbed by the darkness. It could originally illuminate more than 10 meters, but now the range has been reduced by more than half. Even when Su Tong's dark vision looked around, it was pitch black. Snapped. At this time, Su Tong, who was walking in front, suddenly felt a cold feeling under his feet and lowered his head to take a closer look. "It's water." Looking forward along the water, Su Tong's pupils gradually tightened. Gao Zhou couldn't see the situation clearly from behind, so he followed up and wanted to ask Su Tong why he didn't continue walking, but Su Tong covered his mouth. "Shhh." Su Tong turned around and made a silent gesture towards everyone. Then he controlled the hanging lamp and flew forward. With the light of the hanging lamp, everyone finally saw clearly. What he saw was a huge lake in front of him. What was even more terrifying was that the water was as dark as ink, and under the light of the hanging lamp, densely packed insects were clearly visible. Suddenly, Gao Zhou and others felt their scalps go numb, remembering that the bugs they saw outside were nothing compared to the number in front of them. Not to mention the Grand Master, even if the Master throws Taoist Sun Long out, I'm afraid it won't be enough for these insects to chew on. When Gao Zhou and others felt confused, Gao Zhou suddenly stiffened and turned around in confusion, only to see a dark hand placed on his butt. There will be another update in the evening, but I don't know when it will be finished. Don't wait, let's read it tomorrow morning. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 480. Scare. Gao Zhou's heart skipped a beat, but before he could take a closer look, the hand disappeared. When Gao Zhou looked up again, he saw Chang Liuzhu had put down the coffin at some point and was standing behind him. For a moment, the two people's eyes met. Gao Zhou's face became serious. After a while, he cursed in a voice like a fly, "Pervert! Chang Liuzhu! Use a coffin!" At this time, the old man lying on Gao Zhou's back finally spoke and whispered to Su Tong. "Coffin? Yes, the coffin will take us there." The old man patted Gao Zhou and signaled to let him down. He walked to Su Tong and asked with a smile, "Didn't you ask why the coffin is red? Do you have an answer?" Su Tong tilted his head, "Oh, because it's festive." The old man nodded dully, "Yes, Sun Xiaohu told you that?" He, of course not, it's a pass to somewhere, right?" Su Tong scratched his head and thought about it carefully. "Huh." The old man breathed out, "Yes, this is the world of the dead. Your coffin is our passport. Let's ride on the coffin and row across." Su Tong didn't agree immediately after hearing this. After all, this matter was not a trivial matter. If it didn't work, they would be in big trouble. So I silently used plum blossoms to make a prediction for myself first. Gong Gua Gong goes up and down. Seeing the hexagram, Su Tong's heart skipped a beat. The upper and lower hexagrams are all rivers, with each other as thunder below and Gen as above. Judging from the hexagrams, there are many risks along the way, but the meaning of the hexagrams is irreversible. As soon as Su Tong thought about it, he felt that this hexagram was not bad, at least it was not at the end of the road, which meant that the old man's words should be credible. White dragon horse, go carry the coffin. Chang Wuhen curled his lips and didn't move. What he hated most was Su Tong's behavior. If he hadn't insisted on playing a doctor in front of him, thinking of that experience that he didn't want to look back on, Chang Wuxu felt a lot more twisted in his heart. Seeing that this guy was starting to lose his temper, Su Tong grinned and bared his teeth and joked at the old man, "Master, you see, this horse is even disobedient." The old man turned back and glared at Chang Wuhen. Sure enough, seeing the old man's unkind eyes, Chang Wuhen was frightened. After all, he didn't want to experience the feeling of life being worse than death again. I could only turn around and carry the coffin honestly. Su Tong gave a thumbs up to the old man. What master said is a good thing. After saying that, he looked back at Gao Zhou and Mei Du. Be careful later, don't let the monsters under the water take master away. Mei Du was simply a severe case of Shuyunibu. Hearing this, he held his voice and pretended to be hoarse when he said, "Senior brother, don't worry." Gao Zhou looked completely helpless. I saw the coffin being carefully placed on the water by Chang Wenzhen. Su Tong jumped on the coffin first and tried to push the coffin forward a few times to take a look. Something strange happened. The bugs on the water actually moved out of the way after seeing the coffin. After seeing that the coffin was indeed effective, Su Tong felt relieved and let everyone get on the coffin. Fortunately, the coffin was big enough, and there was no problem for 5 people lying on it, but the water was a little deeper. The coffin slid deeper with the water. All they could see was the vast expanse of water in front of them. They didn't even have a specific direction. The area illuminated by Su Tong's hanging lamp was getting smaller and smaller. As for the flashlight, it was a complete waste. Not only could things not be seen clearly, but the light on the water's surface was refracted. On the face, it has no effect at all. Not long after he floated out, Su Tong heard a noise behind him. He looked back and saw sparks behind him. It should be that the other Miao clan chiefs have already arrived. These people moved very quickly. Su Tong couldn't help but think, they were the only ones who could hold the coffin to death. What should they do with so many people behind? Unfortunately, even with his eyesight, he could only see a few sparks in this place, and nothing else. The yin qi here is so strong that my vision, hearing, and even perception are being obstructed. You must know that I have a dark physique, coupled with the blessing of Archangel Michael, a 30% bonus to increase my perception, and the strength of my own Grand Master. I am still suppressed so much here. Not to mention Gao Zhou and Yu Chang Wuju. He squinted his eyes and casually glanced at Mei Du behind him, hoping to take the opportunity to see if this guy was a player. If not, how powerful he was, and why he couldn't see his fate. I saw Mei Du take out a gourd from the backpack behind him, pull out the cork and pour it into his mouth, then carefully put the gourd into his backpack. Third junior brother, Plum Blossom Village has disappeared from the world for a long time. The last time I chatted with someone, they said that this Zhuangzi has become a small attraction in the scenic spot. Where is Plum Blossom Village now? Can you tell me where it will be next time? Come and visit. Su Tong asked. Mei Du smiled and said, Zhuangzi has long been gone. Since the cremation system began, my Huazhuang has basically changed its profession. Now my family is in the funeral parlor business, and no one touches the old craftsmanship anymore. The so-called Maihua village was another name for Yizhuang in the past. According to rumors, it was in Yizhuang that the Maihua Taoist practiced and attained enlightenment. Later, most of the so-called evil arts were created by his old man. It can be said that he is the founder of the side sect. I wonder if the founder chose Yizhuang as the location to establish the sect because it was more convenient to have corpses in Yizhuang? Su Tong unconsciously imagined that his ancestor would disembowel the fresh corpse with a kitchen knife and an iron hook, and carefully study the appearance of the corpse. Nowadays, they are all crematoriums. It is illegal to hide corpses privately in Yizhuang. However, Yizhuang has nothing to do, but turning it into a crematorium is a good choice. It is easy to make money, and playing with corpses openly is a good job. It is many times better than most traditional craftsmen. You always have to adapt to the changes of the times to survive. A low-level actor can become a big star, and a young lady in the chicken coop can become an internet celebrity through live broadcasts. In short, whether it is a low-level or a shady business, in the final analysis, the purpose is not the same. Are you just trying to live a good life? As he spoke, Meidu did not forget to take out his business card and distribute it to everyone. When he looked at the address on it, he saw that it was indeed a crematorium. What was surprising was that Meidu was actually named as the business manager. No way, my family is the contractor, but it is also a public institution. If you want to get money, you can only go in and put your name on it. Meidu shook his shoulders and said helplessly, "I'm jealous." Gao Zhou listened from behind, not to mention how envious and jealous he was. It was also a traditional craft, and while others could adapt to the times and develop tricks, he really could only practice the unicorn arm in bed. Just as he was thinking about it, Gao Zhou suddenly narrowed his eyes and looked forward. In front of me, there seemed to be a coffin floating on the water. What was even weirder was that there were 5 figures sitting on the coffin. Why is there still someone ahead of us? As soon as Gao Zhou said this, Su Tong and others looked at him one after another. Sure enough, on the dark water ahead, a coffin was getting closer and closer to them. "Be careful, something is wrong." Su Tong immediately became alert. They were the first group to come down, and their speed was even faster than those behind them. There was no reason why they would be overtaken by others. Maybe it was left by people who participated in the divine sacrifice before. The old man thought about it for a while and then told them not to be nervous. In the past, there would occasionally be some losers among those who participated in the divine sacrifices. The fate of these losers is unknown, but the black shadow in front of them may be one of them. While they were talking, the coffin in front of them had floated in front of them. Just as the old man said, the 5 people sitting on the coffin in front of him have turned into mummies. I don't know how much time has passed, but sitting on the coffin are 5 dried corpses. Call. After seeing the body on the coffin clearly, everyone felt a little relieved. Gao Zhou glanced back and forth over these corpses curiously, and found that these corpses looked older than the old bacon in the old man's kitchen. He had a preference for collecting all kinds of corpses. When he saw this, he was about to reach out his hand to test the degree of decay of these corpses, when he suddenly felt a tightness in his waist, as if he was entangled with something. "Lower your head and take a look." I didn't know when a handful of black hair was wrapped around my waist. With a fierce pull, Gao Zhou immediately lost his center of gravity, and with a plop, Gao Zhou was pulled off the coffin. Note, the starter is changing. I really can't stand it anymore, my eyelids are fighting. Good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 481. The tiny strands of hair were almost invisible to the naked eye in the darkness, but the power was surprisingly astonishing. Gao Zhou was pulled directly into the water without any precautions. Plop. Everyone was startled and then noticed that Gao Zhou had fallen into the water. At the same time, the surrounding water suddenly became agitated. The insects that had been avoiding the coffin quickly rushed towards Gao Zhou like sharks smelling the smell of blood. Careful! Upon seeing this, Mei Du quickly stretched out his hand to pull Gao Zhou, but as soon as he stretched out his hand, Su Tong pulled him back. Not only did he stop Mei Du from saving people, but he also took out a short knife from the prop book and greeted him. Hit the water and chop down. Even if he has never learned any sword skills, as long as Su Tong is strong enough, even if he has no rules, he will still be very lethal. With one strike of the sword, the water in front of him was suddenly split into 1-meter-high waves by the blade, and the hand he just held sank. Go down. Are you crazy? Mei Du looked at Su Tong with a shocked look on his face. He didn't know what happened to this guy suddenly, and he actually attacked his companions. Su Tong did not explain, but looked sideways at the coffin beside him. One is missing. Chang Liuzhu was the one who spoke. He sat at the back and was the one who saw the most clearly from beginning to end. He said coldly, "There is something wrong with these corpses." After hearing this, Mei Du and the old man turned around and saw, as expected, there were originally 5 mummies on the coffin, but now it turned into 4 in the blink of an eye. Just when he was wondering, he saw bubbles rising from the water, and then a mummy floated out of the water. The arms and chest of the mummy were neatly cut open. It was obviously cut by Su Tong's knife just now. Wound. Upon seeing this, Mei Du's face instantly turned pale. The thing he had just stretched out his hand to pull was actually this mummy. Thinking of this, Mei Du's scalp couldn't help but tingle. Looking at the 4 mummies in front of him again, he found that the empty eye sockets of the mummies were staring at them, and a rattling sound suddenly came from their mouths. Seeing this, Su Tong reached out and grabbed these mummies. He wanted to see what these mummies were. Unexpectedly, as soon as he took action, hairs under the water suddenly became entangled around his wrists. The dense hair was surprisingly powerful. Fortunately, Su Tong was prepared and cut off the hair with a backhand knife. Taking advantage of the delay, the 4 mummies in front of them all jumped into the water. At the same time, the coffin under them began to shake violently. When they lowered their heads, they saw dense hair under the black pool, wrapped around the coffin like seaweed, trying to overturn the coffin. "Old man, didn't you say that the red coffin is a passport?" Chang Wuhan grabbed the old man's shoulders to prevent him from falling. The old man was also frightened. If he fell down, the bugs in the water would eat them up in a matter of minutes without leaving a single hair on them. Su Tong originally wanted to use the power of demons, but he was worried about burning the coffin. Just when he was thinking about countermeasures, he heard Da Ya's voice in his ears. "Headmaster." At this time, the 3 little heads lying at the entrance of the hall poked their heads out. Among them, Da Ya shouted to Su Tong in a low voice, "Headmaster, you have the merit of incense. Just hit him with the merit of incense. This thing is the most scary thing this." Su Tong heard the words without doubting that he was there. A ball of incense merit appeared in his hand and he aimed it at the hair-like things under the coffin and smashed it down. Sure enough, those hairs were stained with the merits of incense, and instantly shrank back as if they had been touched by a nemesis. Without the interference of these hairs, the coffin quickly stabilized. At this moment, Su Tong suddenly felt something. When he looked back, he saw that the 4 mummies that had just fallen into the water were standing on the water, watching them from a distance. "Da Ya, what is that?" "I don't know, but it should be something like a ghost. Ji Xiang is most familiar with this thing." Dia pointed at Jixiang's chubby head. Jixiang's eyes rolled around and he whispered, "There is something in the water, it's some kind of god." "God?" Hearing this, Su Tong's eyes were as bright as lightning. He activated his life eye and looked at Kimin. Sure enough, he vaguely saw a dark shadow under the water. It's just that this thing is hidden very deep, and I can't see the true nature of it clearly. Look, it's second senior brother. At this moment, the water surface suddenly exploded, and Gao Zhou jumped out from the water, Buddha's light burst out from his fist, and he aimed at the black bugs behind him and slapped them. In a moment, large areas of the bugs were burned to ashes under the Buddha's light. But there were too many bugs behind him, and Gao Zhou's punch not only had no effect, but attracted more bugs around him. Just when he was about to fall into the water, a figure rose up from the water, threw a rope around Gao Zhou's waist with his backhand, and then pulled Gao Zhou into his arms. Gao Zhou looked back and realized that the person who took action was actually Meidu. Meidu pulled Gao Zhou back to the coffin. As soon as the insects got close to the coffin, they dispersed instantly, swirling back and forth around the coffin like a black wind, but they had no intention of getting closer. Ahem, thank you. Gao Zhou sat down, coughed up some water and thanked Meidu at the same time. He praised, I didn't realize that you are pretty good at Qinggong. That's not true, I have this. Meidu pointed at his shoes, and saw that his boots were very ordinary, but there were two big bright beads tied to the shoelaces. These are waterproof beads. After being tied to shoelaces, they will feel like walking on flat ground even if you step on the water. Is there such a treasure? Gao Zhou glared. This Meidu was simply too arrogant. Something like this was actually tied to his shoelaces. After all, my Hua village is rich. What happened to you under the water just now? Su Tong asked at this time. Gao Zhou waved his hand. After he fell into the water, he wanted to rush out immediately, but his head was covered with hair. Fortunately, he was in a corpse state and was not afraid of drowning. It's just that those bugs were annoying, but fortunately he just rushed underwater when he saw that he couldn't climb up. As a result, he avoided those bugs. Only then did he realize that these bugs could only survive 1 or 2 meters above the water. If the water was deeper, they would not be able to dive down. He also saw a huge statue underwater, but before he could see it clearly, he found that the hair on the top of his head had disappeared, so he took the opportunity to rush up. Statue. Su Tong thought about the dark figure he had just seen and was thinking about it. When he looked up again, he found that the mummies and coffins in the distance had long since disappeared. Seeing this, they did not stay here and quickly paddled forward. Seeing that there was no meat to eat, the insects had to disperse gradually. Fortunately, they were not far from the shore in the first place, and they washed up on the other shore in a short time. Call. Once ashore, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. Meidu sat down on the ground, panting heavily. Coming out this time was really an eye-opener. Gao Zhou also felt that it was very evil just now. Thinking about it, he couldn't help but feel his scalp numb. Fortunately, Su Tong used the merit of incense to get rid of those hairs, otherwise his coffin would have been overturned. Su Tong can use his strength to rush out, but others may be at risk, especially Gao Zhou and Chang Wugu. It's not that they are not strong enough, but that the old man is too deadly. I wonder how the master and the old man of the Gao family came here? Just when Su Tong was hesitating, a scream came from the distance. Su Tong and the others stood up and looked behind them. They were too far away to see what happened. But we can see that the sparks in the distance are being extinguished in large areas, and we don't know how many people are unlucky here. Let's go. We don't have much time and we have to hurry up. Otherwise, when the time comes, this place will be filled again and it will be difficult for us to go back. After hearing what the old man said, no one dared to delay any longer. After Chang Wuju lifted the coffin and carried it on his body, he continued walking down the blue brick road in front of him. Not long after walking, the air in front of him began to become dry. Up, some broken buildings even began to appear. The buildings here. Meidu looked at the towering stone sculptures in front of him and couldn't help but marvel. It looks like the style of the Tang dynasty. Can you see this? Gao Zhou walked over casually. I studied archaeology in college, Meidu said, pushing up the glasses frame on the bridge of his nose. Good guy, I am a descendant of Plum Blossom Village. My family runs a crematorium and majored in archaeology. Together with the corpses from the past and present, they have all been clearly arranged. As he spoke, Gao Zhou walked up to the stone sculpture, raised his head and looked at the stone sculpture, and was immediately startled. I have seen this thing before. It was this thing under the water just now, and it was the hair of this thing that attacked us. Gao Zhou redescribed to Su Tong and the others what they had just seen underwater, with a crooked mouth and a wide nose, and two big fish hanging from both ears, which looked exactly like the ones underwater. This is the water god. Are the rumors about the water god true? The old man recognized the stone statue, but when he heard what Gao Zhou said, he couldn't help but murmur in his heart and hurriedly bowed behind him. What a water god! He is an evil god when I see him. Don't give me a chance. I will blow up his statue next time. Gao Zhou cursed angrily. In fact, if it weren't for the two ordinary people, old man and Meidu, Gao Zhou would have completely transformed long ago, summoning the zombies he refined to make bombs, and blowing up the underwater statues to pieces. Okay, keep walking, old man. Where exactly is the Yin-Yang mountain you mentioned? Su Tong asked the old man. I don't know. I've never been here before. Anyway, let's just go ahead. The old man also admitted that he was just thinking about it anyway. He was already at this age and there was nothing to be afraid of. Seeing this, Su Tong really felt that their team was really like Journey to the West. The master was determined to go to the West, and the four of them had to fight tooth and nail to protect him. Wait a minute, look at this. At this time, Meidu suddenly squatted down, pushed aside the gravel, pointed at the mark on the stone and said, we from Maihua village have been to this place before. Su Tong walked over and took a look, and sure enough he saw a plum blossom carved on the stone. Why would people from Plum Blossom Village come to a place like this? Su Tong didn't know much about Maihua village, but he also knew that the people in Maihua village had always lived in seclusion and would never set foot in the world unless necessary. I don't know. I've never heard of anyone from our family coming to Xiangzi. Meidu also felt strange about the appearance of this mark, but he was sure that it was the mark of his family, and the plum blossom was missing the direction of a petal. Exactly the direction pointed. Only people in Plum Blossom Village know this. It is really surprising to see the imprint of Plum Blossom Village in this place. Plum blossoms lead the way, there must be a reason. Let's go this way and have a look. Meidu said and walked ahead to lead the way. The cave in front of you is full of slopes made of gravel. If you are not careful, the gravel may collapse. After passing through these complex environments, an arched doorway appeared in front of them. There is a sign hanging on the doorway with 3 words written on it, Death to the city in vain. When he saw the sign on the door, Gao Zhou was happy. It's a waste of time to kill the city. I really think this place is a ghost town. However, he also remembered that it was written in the Lingling Yin and Yang Feng Shui diagram that after the dragon bone clears the way, there is the false Yin Cao, which should be referring to this place. At this time, Meidu saw the plum blossom mark on an inconspicuous stone again. After comparing it with the bottom, he found that the direction was not for them to go in, but to go through an inconspicuous small hole on the side. Now the old man stopped and said, I want you to go, but I won't go. I'm in a hurry and must get to Yin Yang Mountain as soon as possible. Wait a minute, since my senior left a signal, there must be a reason. We shouldn't rush in like this. Meidu insisted on taking the trail to see what was going on. Seeing this, Su Tong thought about it and asked Gao Zhou and Chang Wogu to follow the old man in first, while he and Meidu went to see what was going on. He believed that with the strength of Gao Zhou and Chang Wogu, there would be no problem in keeping the old man alive. At worst, they could knock the old man unconscious at the critical moment, and they could do whatever they wanted. When Gao Zhou heard that this was a solution, he and Su Tongbing parted ways. After watching Su Tong and Mei Du sneak into the path, the old man curled his lips and said with an unhappy expression, "Is this your brother? Aren't you afraid that he will lose you?" Gao Zhou was startled and looked sideways at the old man, his eyes becoming increasingly evil. "Old man, you either kill me directly or shut up. I really think I'm afraid of you. Brother, you'll know if you try to kill me." The old man was glared at by Gao Zhou, his heartbeat accelerated suddenly, and he subconsciously wanted to make Gao Zhou suffer. But no matter how he activated the goo worm, Gao Zhou's eyes were always staring at him, and his fists began to rattle. Enough. At this time, Chang Wuhan suddenly stood in front of the old man, his expression rarely became serious. One hand was placed on the old man's shoulder, and the other hand picked up a stone from nowhere and held it in his palm. "Old people and young people are all angry, so don't worry about it." As he spoke, Chang Wuhan pinched his fingers, and the stone in his hand was crushed into powder. Upon seeing this, the old man looked at Chang Wuhan, and saw that Chang Wuhan's face was expressionless, and his eyes were as if he were looking at a dead person. Seeing this, the old man finally stopped urging the goo worm, and pretended that nothing was wrong and said, "Okay, it's better to listen to what you said. You have been carrying the coffin for so long, so you should change it to someone else and let him carry it. Hey, this is a good feeling." When Chang Liuzhu heard this, he grinned, put the coffin on the ground, and followed the old man in front. Gao Zhou exhaled a long breath, stroking the coffin with a trembling hand, and saw a big drop of cold sweat rolling down his forehead, spitting out blood-laced spit, and followed behind with a black face. After the three of them passed through the arched stone door, they walked a few steps further and saw various stone houses on both sides of the road. The stone houses were very large and almost no different from normal houses. These stone houses were actually carved out of the entire rock. Their appearance and style are really a bit like the Tang dynasty. I just don't know how many people are needed to complete such a large project. It really seems like that. Gao Zhou looked at the stone houses around him, looking left and right, thinking that his grandfather's soul should be lost here, but there was not even a ghost here. The three of them had not taken 2 steps when the old man and Chang Wuhan who were walking in front of them suddenly stopped. "I saw 2 statues standing at the crossroads in front of me. One of the statues is black and the other is white. They are also surprisingly ugly in appearance. They have a round face with a broad nose, big eyes, and a big mouth. Standing there makes people startled. Hey, black and white have been sorted out. Old man, is this really your family's holy place? Why did the voodoo cult engage in Taoist underworld?" Gao Zhou placed the coffin on the ground and started teasing. The old man glared at him, just when he was about to explain. Boom! Sudden. The sound of a gong came from an unknown place, frightening them to death. What was even weirder was that the 2 statues in front of them actually uttered human voices. "The gate of hell is closed, and 100 ghosts are walking at night." As soon as the sound fell, I heard a kick, click, click sound. Gao Zhou's heart skipped a beat, and a bad premonition came over him. He quickly grabbed the old man, pulled him to his side, and looked around him alertly. At the end of the street in the distance, a white light flashed. The white light was like 2 long dragons, gradually lighting up the dark world in front of us. That was the lantern hanging in front of the door, and it was actually lit at the same time. At this time, Gao Zhou raised his nose, and a strange smell began to fill the air. This smell was very familiar to him, corpse oil. The sound of click, click, click was getting louder and louder now, as if something was being opened. Something's wrong, something's coming out. Chang Liuzhu squinted his eyes and stepped back to the old man's side. He glanced at the coffin and said, "Throw him into the coffin first." When Gao Zhou heard this idea, it was a good idea and he immediately opened the coffin. Unexpectedly, as soon as his hand touched the coffin lid suddenly opened a crack on its own, and then a dark hand suddenly came out of the coffin and grabbed the collar of the old man who was about to enter the coffin. Oops! The sudden turn of events caught both Gao Zhou and Chang Wuju off guard. The old man was caught directly in the coffin like a puppet on strings. Then a hoarse chuckle came from the coffin, "It's really true, take away to eat." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 482. Da. The stones rolled down along the cracks in the cave until they disappeared into the bottomless cave below. It's hard to imagine that such a scene would be like this underground. Various strange-shaped stones present a unique beauty. Walking on them, even Su Tong would feel a tense and exciting feeling, as if he was walking on the ground. Experience a childhood fun adventure. But it was getting more and more remote, and Su Tong had to wonder if Meidu had gone the wrong way. If we go further down, there will be no road. Are you sure we didn't go to the wrong place? Absolutely not. The direction of the plum blossom mark is unmistakable, and the more remote it is, the bigger the problem is. Meidu squatted down and carefully crawled through a gap, then said with certainty. Seeing that Meidu was so sure, Su Tong no longer doubted, "Then let me explore the way first." As Su Tong whistled, he saw a black wind coming out of the hall behind him and falling in front of Su Tong. It was auspicious. Meidu couldn't help but be surprised when he saw such a big mouse appearing in front of him. Su Tong didn't need any more explanation. Ji Xiang raised his little paw and cupped it towards Meidu, and immediately turned into a black wind and quickly rushed into the gap. "This is Xianer." Meidu's eyes widened with shock on his face. "You actually know how to attack the northeast." Looking back at Su Tong, the man in front of him was only a few years older than him, and it became increasingly difficult for him to see clearly. Immediately he couldn't help but smile bitterly. Feng Lelu, this time I really made everyone in the world miserable." He had also read Feng Lelu's information, and had gone through almost all of Su Tong's identity and background that could be found. It is precisely because such detailed information proves that Su Tong is just an ordinary person that so many strangers flock to Xiangzi to hunt this big fat sheep. But who would have thought that this big fat sheep would transform into the overlord of the jungle, a tiger that eats people without spitting out bones? He, junior brother Shat, senior brother has many abilities. I will give you a show again if I have the chance. Su Tong looked at Meidu with a subtle smile. The words changed. "Junior brother Shat, why haven't you let me see clearly what you are capable of?" In fact, the reason why Su Tong came here was because he wanted to find a chance to see what kind of methods the legendary Plum Blossom Manor had. Meidu quickly waved his hand. No, I'm just playing with a stick in front of the monkey, and I'm playing with a knife in front of Guangong." Hizzy. While the two were talking, Ji Xiang had already poked his head out of the gap, and then turned into a black wind and returned to the entrance of the hall. After rolling on the ground, his chubby body shook and turned into a little fat man. I don't know if this guy ate too much incense. His sharp mouth and monkey cheeks have now become richer. There is a zombie down there, a rare yaksha. Yaksha. Su Tong was shocked. Are you sure you read it correctly? Yaksha. That's right, it's still a complete yasha, Jixiang said with certainty. He has been with Gao Zhou for so long, and he also knows something about corpse refining. Zombies also have levels, including iron zombies, bronze zombies, gold zombies, yakshas, and finally the diamond zombies. Su Tong didn't know what was on top of the Vajra corpse. If Gao Zhou knew that there was a complete yaksha here, he would rush over immediately even if he was bitten by the old man with a poisonous insect. Gao Zhou had a yaksha in his hand, which was the Western priest, but I don't know how Qinzhu and the others did it in the first place. The yaksha could only be regarded as a semi-finished product. A truly complete yaksha can definitely challenge the Grand Master in terms of strength. It's the kind of person that I can't beat, but I can escape from the Grand Master's hands in a circle. Let's go and have a look. Su Tong immediately became interested and wanted to see what the overall yasha looked like. Immediately let Jixiang lead the way. After the two passed through the small cracks in the mountains, they quickly found the place where the yaksha was. A very small and narrow cave, the height inside is only 1 meter and the width is only 4 meters. A coffin that was badly stained, rotten and full of holes was stuck sideways inside. If you look closely, you can even see that there seems to be a body lying inside the coffin. This is it. See if there are any marks from your family. Su Tong pointed forward, and Meidu took the flashlight and looked around, but couldn't find the so-called mark. But when he pointed the flashlight at the coffin in front of him, hey, I found it. Su Tong took a look at Meidu's flashlight and saw a very inconspicuous plum blossom mark. He frowned immediately. Why this coffin? Are you sure you got it right? It would be fine if it was an ordinary coffin, but this coffin contained a yaksha-level zombie, and it was still that kind of complete body. Normal Grand Masters would never touch this kind of zombie. He couldn't be beaten to death, and he was still very tired. If he was scratched a few times, he might even be poisoned by corpse poison. It should be a preventive measure designed by the seniors in the family. Meidu opened his backpack and took out the red ink thread, candles and incense sticks from it. Then he looked at Su Tong with a smile. Elder brother, you have great supernatural powers and boundless power. It will be no problem to suppress the zombies. No problem, Su Tong nodded readily, but then rubbed his fingers. But you have to pay. Ah. You still need money. Meidu covered his forehead. Senior brother, I am your favorite junior brother Shat. Su Tong found a dry place to sit down, and said with a smile when he heard this, Junior brother Shat, playing pretend with you is free, but fighting is not. Meidu's mouth twitched and he could only obey. He rummaged in his backpack for a while, then took out a wallet and threw it to Su Tong with a pained expression. That's it? I'm in a hurry to go out. I'll give it to you next time, bring more. Su Tong took the wallet and glanced sideways at Meidu. I'm not talking about Grandpa Mao. However, when he opened the wallet and took a look, he was stunned. Meidu said with a thief smile, in our industry, I don't allow other currencies to be used to measure my wealth. Good guy. Gao Zhou said that this guy is a rich man, and he is absolutely right. This guy is still a rich man, he is simply the god of wealth in Su Tong's eyes. What he saw in his wallet were oil yellow banknotes. This thing is the treasure that I have been asking for. I took it out and counted it, and there were 20 thick sheets. Only. Hey, why is your Ming Chao different from the ones I saw before? Su Tong took a closer look and found that these ghost notes not only cut corners in size, but also imitated the size of real banknotes, and even the numbers on them were changed to smaller sizes. Elder brother, the real Netherworld treasure banknote is a priceless treasure. One treasure banknote can be sold for at least 3 million on the black market. This price is still due to the fact that it has a price but no market. If someone can really take it out, no matter how much it is, people are rushing to buy it. As for this thing you have, well, if I say this is a pirated version developed by me, will you hit me? Su Tong covered his chest, feeling instantly offended. It wasn't because Meidu's notes were pirated copies, but because his words made him suddenly realize how precious the notes he burned in one go in the first script world were. No wonder Xiechi, Fan, and Ba will come in the end. But having said that, this pirated version looks a bit dull in terms of feel and color. Except that the numbers on it are a bit small and the format is wrong. At first glance it almost looks like an authentic Netherworld treasure note. Is this thing easy to use? It's easy to use. It's absolutely easy to use. Even if the Ming Chao produced by Mai Huazhuang is pirated, it will be recognized by the underworld. Meidu assured Su Tong, patting his chest. Although these underworld notes were made by himself in private, there was a big seal of underworld on the back. This is the unique privilege of Plum Blossom Village. Mai Huazhuang serves as a bridge between the Yin Cao and the Yang world. Master Mai Hua Taoist even personally went to the Yin Cao to negotiate with the Emperor of Bian, thus obtaining the right to print the underworld notes. In other words, their house is a crematorium on the surface, but behind the scenes it is a place where the underworld prints money. No wonder, but if that's the case, why not just print nether treasure bank notes? Su Tong raised this question. When it comes to this matter, Mei Du is also helpless. I don't know, it is said that the motherboard is broken, and now I can't find anyone who can repair it, so I can only use the new version. Anyway, the people below will accept the money. Hey, I know why people in Plum Blossom Village never get involved in political affairs. If I can print money every day, I can close the door and concentrate on my research, and don't care if the world is falling apart outside. While the two of them were talking, Mei Du had already laid out the things he needed to prepare. Then he looked at Su Tong and said, "Elder brother, let's be careful with the Yaksha-level zombies. Don't fight with him. We will retreat after I take away the contents of the coffin." However, Su Tong slapped his thigh and stood up, walking directly towards the coffin. "Don't bother me, I'll just suppress this thing for you. That is the complete yaksha." Su Tong bent over and twisted his neck without moving, tilting his head and giving a thumbs up. "That's for others, but for me, if you can't beat me, I'll refund your money." I saw Su Tong walking to the coffin as he spoke, crossing his hands and bowing to the coffin in front of him. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 483. Is Yaksha strong? Very strong. But not as strong as me. Su Tong bowed down and saw reality and reality intertwined in front of his eyes. A crack and an abyss was suddenly torn open. Rotten buildings, dilapidated pavilions, and sneaky shadows shuttled among them. For a moment, it was like being in hell. Mei Du watched with wide eyes, and his body could not stop shaking, trembling with excitement. This was the rumored evil spell that ended an era. As early as a long time ago, the three words Beishinko appeared in family records. It's just like most people, there are only a few records about Beishinko, not even the spring and autumn period brushwork, and few people will take a close-up of it. On the one hand, it is because of their hatred of Shuigui that they do not want to make everything about Shuigui public. On the other hand, it is also because Shuigui is dead. The greatest revenge on a dead person is to let him be forgotten in the long river of history. Therefore, the younger generation of foreigners now know about Shankao mostly from the mouths of their family elders. Mei Du's understanding of Beishinko can only be said to be based on one-sided information. After all, Mai Hua village is not a well-known and decent family, and the family doesn't care whether Beishinko is called a witchcraft by Jianghu people. As a technical school, it wants to bring Beishinko back to the world. Of course, by the way, it must be named after their Plum Blossom village. It was only after research by several elders of the family that they discovered that this was not the case at all. The information they collected alone was useless, and they could not even restore it to the surface. It wasn't until the moment Mei Du saw Su Tong perform Bai Shan Kao that he understood why the elders in the family couldn't restore it, because it was not some evil magic, but the Taoist magic of the 8 classics. At this moment, Mei Du was standing next to Su Tong, observing everything around him with empathy. He was more sure of his thoughts, but there was an unavoidable sadness in his heart. It's too difficult. Not to mention that the elders in the family have passed away. Even if they are still alive, there is no way to copy the Beishan Kao. Not only because it is too difficult and too complicated. This is especially because in this era, the great master has become a legend, and this level cannot be overcome, let alone learning the Shankao. I really don't know how this guy broke through to the realm of the Grand Master. Is it true that, as the rumors say, it was Shuigui who left some backup, or was it the immortal that was taken away from Li 11? Can Bao help? Just when Meidu was puzzled, the coffin in front of him suddenly stood up. Ouch! Under the heart-rending roar from the coffin, a creature with bat wings and a body like a demon ape shattered the coffin lid. When Meidu took a look, he saw that the zombie's body was purple, its skin had sharp and rough scales, and its thin face still retained human features. But those eyes were like two red lanterns, emitting a scarlet halo. This is the complete flying yaksha. When the wings spread, the black corpse evil stirred up. Wherever the demonic energy surged, it actually wanted to forcibly tear apart the underworld world summoned by Su Tong and turn it into reality again. This is the scary thing about yaksha. Although he is not a grand master, with his own immortality and terrifying body, he is already difficult to deal with. With such a powerful zombie that can easily tear apart reality and reality, it is no wonder that this thing dares to challenge the Grand Master head-on. Ouch! Yaksha's eyes glowed red. After waking up, his eyes immediately locked on Su Tong. He was obviously very dissatisfied with the way Su Tong woke him up. He spread his wings and stirred up the corpse evil wherever he passed. It actually caused hell to shatter and return to reality. Seeing Yasha rushing towards him, Meidu's muscles instantly froze, and the blood in his body seemed to freeze. Only in fear did he realize that the self-confidence he was so proud of, like a proud man of heaven, was nothing in the face of life and death. It's no different from ordinary people. Fortunately, at this time, Su Tong moved his palms, and the abyss under his feet quickly sank, opening the distance between the two again. At the same time, he cupped his fist with his backhand and hit the second mountain slam. Immediately, the cavalry rushed out from the abyss, forming a torrent and rushing towards Yasha. Ouch! There was a loud noise, and the world collapsed in front of him. Yasha was obviously not very angry at getting up, and he actually hit the cavalry. Suddenly, Su Tong's yin soldiers were knocked to pieces. Yaksha's black nails were like magical weapons. When he waved them, they turned the zombies into sharp blades. Whenever those yin soldiers were touched, it will be cut into pieces in an instant. Almost instantly, Su Tong's underworld soldiers suffered heavy losses. Meidu watched the scene in front of him that was like a fairy tale actually happening in front of him, and his mood was indescribably ups and downs. But when he saw that the complete Yasha was so terrifying, Meidu couldn't help but start to retreat. After all, he was just an ordinary person. At least in front of Su Tong and this yaksha, there was no difference between him and those ordinary people. But before he finished speaking, Su Tong had already taken action. I saw Su Tong jump up, and a rotten skeleton warhorse seemed to have received the call. It quickly rushed to Su Tong and sat down, and then led Su Tong towards Yaksha. When Yasha saw Su Tong rushing towards him, his eyes were filled with excitement. He flapped his wings and rolled up a large number of zombies. The dark corpses covered the sky and covered the sun, resembling a dark cloud. Yasha was among them as if he were the incarnation of a demon. But Su Tong is more like a mortal who goes up against the sky alone, trying to challenge the power of heaven. This scene made Meidu's eyes widen. His ears were buzzing and he couldn't hear anything for a while. Only the sound of his heartbeat in his chest echoed in his ears. At the moment of the confrontation, Su Tong's body suddenly burst into dark red flames, swallowing Su Tong and his horse together. Boom! The fire ignited and jumped into the sky, making a sound like a tsunami. It was so huge that it made people's ears buzz. Meidu was trembling with fear when he saw a person in the sea of fire riding a horse of fire. The horse was covered in red crystal armor and its entire body was covered in flames. What is even more eye-catching is the figure riding on the horse of fire, with the bright red armor and the sky-covering fire behind him hanging on his shoulders, as hot and eye-catching as his cloak. Ouch! In an instant, the corpses all over the sky disappeared in the flames. Su Tong punched Yaksha hard on the chest, leaving Yaksha's sharp claws scratching on the red armor without leaving even a shallow scratch. This hellfire caused Feishan Yaksha to scream in agony and turn around to escape. "Get down here, you!" But how could Su Tong give him this opportunity? He galloped forward and rushed behind Feishan Yaksha in an instant. His huge horse hoofs, carrying the hot hellfire, stepped hard on Feishan Yaksha's face, directly killing him. Kicked into the abyss. Yasha's crazy howling and the burning of hellfire, even his immortal body couldn't bear it. At the same time, this guy was very unlucky, and he even triggered the passive gangrene of Ember. The large wound under the skin looked like honeycomb, as if it could breathe. It was red and dark, and the hellfire contained inside made Yaksha even more tormented. It's a pity that this Yaksha seems to have been sleeping for too long and has forgotten how to speak, otherwise he would have started cursing at this moment. He was sleeping soundly, dreaming of a beautiful woman, but he was forcibly awakened by someone, who also directly pressed his head. A hammer, this grievance would be uncomfortable for anyone. Seeing that Su Tong had already rushed down, Yasha did not dare to fight with Su Tong anymore, and flashed his wings to dive down. As a result, Su Tong stopped chasing after seeing this, and allowed Yaksha to enter the bottom of the abyss. A huge gate appeared in front of Yaksha. Kick 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 kick. At this time, the door slowly opened, and a wisp of black spring gushes out, swallowing Yaksha in the black water, and then dragging him directly into the door. Yasha didn't know what was behind this door, but the aura coming out of it made Yasha instinctively frightened. He waved his wings as hard as he could and rushed out of the black water, trying to tear Su Tong's world apart between reality and reality to escape. And go. But before he could fly, a pair of palms as big as hills came out of the door and grabbed Yasha's legs. The huge force tried to force Yasha into the door. Yaksha screamed repeatedly and flapped his wings desperately, but then he saw a golden light flying out of the door and turning into a shining Taoist talisman in mid-air, hitting Yaksha's head. This hit Yaksha was blinded instantly. Before he could react, he was hit hard by the black water rising up from the sky and slammed into the door. As the door slowly closed, he was hit hard. 3 shadows were standing behind the gap in the door, bending towards Su Tong to pay respect. "Hey, training is pretty fast." Su Tong curled his lips, thinking that the master's skills were so good that he managed to subdue Taoist Sun Long, the eldest princess, and the stupid mountain ghost in such a short time. Immediately, the hellfire on his body dissipated, and the bright red armor on his body also disappeared. These are the rents promised by Emerta to upgrade the Demon King's Advent and Demon Flame into Hell Armor and Hellfire. The first time I tried it, it was much more powerful than I imagined. It seems that this tenant's contribution is still worthy of recognition. It seems that even though he does not rely on Bashenko, he still has the fighting ability to challenge the Great Master. This is something Su Tong is particularly satisfied with. Flying down and jumping down, Meidu was completely stunned. At this time, Su Tong received a warning from the prop book. Warning. You are showing the prop card skills in front of non-players. If the other party cannot accept this recognition, you will be severely punished. The recognition judgment is in progress. This warning was not unexpected, it was even expected. The ability of the prop card is not allowed to be easily displayed in front of non-players, but this definition is very vague. After all, strictly speaking, my dark physique and prop card ability are displayed almost all the time, or my life icon, even the unupgraded magic flame can still be displayed in front of strangers. But to what extent is the red line reached? There was no need to think about it before, but now that the lives of Gao Zhou and Chang Wogu are in the hands of the old man, he must figure this out, so, junior brother Sha, just sacrifice yourself. Su Tong waited quietly. At this time, Meidu suddenly woke up and looked at Su Tong's lips that were still trembling for a moment and slowly opened his mouth in shock. Ren Shixian learned how to make a lot of money, but Meidu found that he couldn't find the right words for a moment, and after holding it for a long time, he said, the Grand Master is so awesome. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 485. The judgment is over. You used the prop card in front of non-players. It has no impact and will not be punished. The result obtained was similar to what Su Tong thought. It was not impossible to use the prop card ability in front of strangers. But if it is used in front of ordinary people, it may be very troublesome. The criterion for judgment should be whether the other party can accept such cognition. If you are unable to recognize it, you may not only face a very high punishment, but you may also have to kill people and silence them. Otherwise, the punishment may be higher, even reaching a level that is difficult to accept. I believe this is also the reason why most players rarely show up in reality. Hurry up and see if there are any clues. Okay. Meidu hurriedly ran to the coffin. The lid of the coffin had been shattered, but the contents under the coffin were intact. If you look carefully, you will see that there is a wooden box inside. The wooden box has the special mark of their Plum Blossom Village on it. You can't go wrong with that. Meidu's eyes lit up, and he carefully opened the wooden tube. Inside was a scroll made of unknown leather. After carefully opening it, what came into view was densely packed and strange fonts. This. Meidu glanced over and looked at it for about 2 minutes before his expression gradually became serious. The font on it is a font unique to their Maihua village. It needs to be interpreted according to a special formula, but the content inside makes Meidu even more shocked. After he carefully studied the above content, he looked at Su Tong with an expression of embarrassment. Elder brother, this place is not the so-called place of sacrifice to gods, but a prison. Prison. Su Tong looked at him suspiciously. Meidu handed the scroll to Su Tong and helped him decipher the contents. In the 27th year of Jiajing's reign, he was called to Hunan. A total of 78 Taoist friends from all walks of life were responsible for cleaning up the ghosts and ghosts in Hunan, sealing up spiritual caves, and clearing out evil caves. The familiar content began, and Su Tong couldn't help but instantly think of the content on the Lingling Yin and Yang Feng Shui diagram. It seems that in the 27th year of Jiajing reign, when Qin Tianjian entered Hunan, he recruited 78 people along the way, and this senior from Maihua Wang happened to be among them. This is a bit of a coincidence. Just listen to Meidu continue to explain. In March of the same year, there was a conflict between the mountain spirits who had been killing for thousands of years and the voodoo section. The two sides fought hard and suffered heavy casualties. More than half of the 78 people were reduced. Deputy Gennan Genkuo of the Kintian prison submitted a petition. In the same year, on the 3rd day of May, the cabinet issued 3 imperial edicts, severely reprimanding Nangenkuo for his inability to do things well, and ordered the governor Zhang Lu to go to the mountain to appease him. He also granted the great chieftain Zhang numerous gold brocade treasures to coordinate Zhang Lu in completing affairs in western Hunan. The content of these 2 paragraphs is very short, but if you read it carefully, you will find that it is very interesting. At this time, the Kintian prison was not like the Datong dynasty, where the father did not care for the mother. It would be an understatement to say that he was at the peak of his power. 78 strangers were summoned along the way, and even people from Plum Blossom Village were mobilized. It is conceivable that the people who could participate in this matter were all top-notch people at the time. Master. It is not an exaggeration to say that no one dares to offend the black and white, and with the support of the imperial court behind them, no one would dare to disapprove of such a large team along the way. But in this remote place in western Hunan, we suffered a big loss. Not only did he suffer heavy casualties, but he was also reprimanded by the court, and finally ordered the governor to come to mediate. This was tantamount to taking away the power of the Kintian prison. But it can also be seen from the side that the saying of a century-old dynasty and a 1,000-year chieftain is no joke. Try it in another place. It doesn't matter whether you are a guard or the leader of a religion. When you meet the officials of the Kintian prison, don't be a head shorter, let alone get beaten. But the voodoo cult beat him, and not only beat him, but after the beating, the court also tried to comfort him, which was really interesting. Things were pretty normal up to this point, but the next part started to get serious. The following year, Zhonglu reached an agreement with the voodoo sect under the mediation of Chieftain Zhang. The specific content is unknown, but since then no voodoo sect in Qingshan has stopped him. In March of the following year, the Dark Wind caused numerous casualties, and the 9E Underworld Ghost King came out of the mountain and killed countless people. In June of the following year, Qin Tianjian Nanzhenkuo led 34 strangers, carrying the Dragon and Tiger Divine Power flag, to fight against the 9E Ming Ghost King. The 9E Ming Ghost King was defeated and was beheaded by the Dragon and Tiger Divine Power flag. 3 of his heads were killed. Second, retreat into the Yin Yang Cave. In the same month, we attacked Yin Yang Cave again, but unexpectedly a traitor appeared among our companions, and our success fell short. I was also seriously injured and had to hide in the cave. After only a few days, when I tried to leave, the road was blocked, the underground river was flowing backwards, and poisonous insects were covering the surface of the river. I was already in a dead situation. The origin of the traitor Wang Zhao is unknown. He is despicable, cunning, insidious, and vicious, and he has learned Japanese magic. I fought with this man more than 10 times in the cave, and the outcome was indistinguishable. It is difficult to remember the years in the cave, and I am about to die. If anyone in my Plum Blossom lineage learns this news in the future, even though 2 of the 9 evil underworld ghosts will be chopped off, they will be unable to cause trouble, but the centipede insects will die without becoming stiff. Don't take risks. There is nothing on the body, but there are 3 jade plum hairpins, which have strange effects. They are the treasures left by the ancestors. They are hidden at the bottom of the coffin. They can protect their lives in critical moments. In my Hua village, Mei Si Yuan, an unworthy descendant, left a pen. After Mei Du translated all the content above, his expression was obviously a little bad. He didn't know who this Mei Si Yuan was. He must be a great-grandfather of his family. Unexpectedly, he died here in the end. How about, I release your ancestors? Su Tong was a little embarrassed. He originally wanted to recruit a younger brother for his master, but he didn't expect that he would accept all his ancestors. Don't. Mei Du refused without thinking. Although Plum Blossom Village is the source of the yin element, our ancestor, Taoist Mai Hua, once left instructions that the corpses of all our descendants and disciples of Plum Blossom Village are not allowed to be left outside, and we are not allowed to turn ourselves into zombies. You release this ancestor, I will be forced to enforce the family law and crush it to ashes. Mei Du explained that as to why Taoist Mai Hua left this family rule back then, Mei Du himself didn't know. Furthermore, although Mei Si Yuan is one of his great-grandfathers, even if he does not need to enforce family laws, he cannot bring a zombie back inexplicably. Opening the door, Dad, look, I went out to do some archaeology and brought back an ancestor. Please prepare to kowtow. This is outrageous. He estimated that his father could feed him 7 wolves for a month. So after much deliberation, Mei Du could think of the most appropriate solution: let this ancestor stay under the command of the senior brother. Although he is a bit suspected of betraying his ancestors, he sincerely thinks about his ancestors. As everyone knows, Su Tong felt relieved when he saw that Mei Du had no intention of asking for his ancestors. This would save him trouble. He was really worried that if Mei Du wanted to ask for his ancestors from him, he would inevitably have to go to the master and spend a lot of time, and he didn't know if the master would hand over this little brother. But having said that, depending on Mei Si Yuan's intention, the Jui Ghost King was not really killed. In other words, part of the content on Lingling Yin and Yang Feng Shui diagram is false. At least the above thing about the 9 evil Ghost King is false. He is suspected of lying about military merit. On the other hand, this place is not a place for worshipping gods. Su Tong speculated that the river outside was probably where Nanjianqiu saw the failure of his plan and suffered heavy losses, whether it was out of consideration for his own shame or the face of the court. Let's just unite with the voodoo cult to create such a thing. The purpose is not only to prevent the 9 evil Ghost King from reappearing, but also to prevent future generations from entering and finding out the truth. Of course, the above are just Su Tong's personal speculations. Su Tong doesn't know what the actual situation is, and it is not important. What is important is that the high priest is afraid that he has fooled everyone. The old man doesn't understand the truth here, and he can understand it, but as the high priest of the voodoo sect, can he not know what is hidden in this? Since the high priest knew it well, why did he do this? While Su Tong was still trying to figure out what the high priest was planning, Mei Du had already found the box left by Mei Si Yuan from under the coffin. The box was made of sunken wood and had not rotted away after being buried in the soil for so many years. After opening it, there were 3 jade hairpins lying inside, each shaped like a dead tree with a plum blossom on top. The top is sparkling with light, fresh and clear, and the fluorescence flashing on each flower is different. Obviously, this is an incredible treasure. Mei Du took out the 3 plum blossoms and wiped them carefully on his hand. Then the messenger used his own secret method to activate them, and the plum blossom suddenly glowed. "Can you lend it to me?" Seeing the strange appearance of these 3 plum blossoms, Su Tong couldn't help but be curious. This thing was obviously much more advanced than the magic weapon used by Taoist Wei Zhui and the Miao tribe leader. So he was very curious in his heart, what exactly did these 3 plum blossoms have? Function. Give. Mei Du didn't hesitate at all and handed the things directly to Su Tong, while carefully looking at Su Tong's expression from the corner of his eye. Of course, Mei Du's little moves couldn't be hidden from him, but Su Tong was just curious. Take the plum blossom hairpin in the box and look at it, then try to throw it into the prop book to see if the prop book can give a detailed explanation. Qingming plum blossom hairpin. The carrier is not afraid of yin qi entering the body, nor is he afraid of corpse poison harming the body. Active skill 1, Mei Xiang Qianyue. It consumes 10 script points. After activation, all ghosts cannot see their shadows, and those who are not great gods cannot see their shadows. Duration, 30 minutes. Cooling time, 2 minutes. Note, according to legend, the Plum Blossom Taoist used this item to cause trouble in the underworld and wasted no time in the city, and then escaped without a trace. If there is a technique that can be passed down, it can be used instead of script points. Active skill 2. Passive skill 1. When Su Tong saw the entry, he couldn't help being shocked. Such an inconspicuous plum blossom hairpin could have such miraculous effects. So he threw the other 2 hairpins into the prop book. These 2 hairpins are Yellow Spring Plum Blossom Hairpin and Evil Lang Plum Blossom Hairpin. The former has the ability to transform and change places, while the latter has the ability to hit ghosts and gods hard and seems to be the nemesis of ghosts and gods. Moreover, if these 3 are worn together at the same time, they will also activate special effects, which can shield all the torture tools of the ghosts and gods, such as the soul hook lock, the soul killing rod, etc. Seeing such an introduction, everyone was shocked. What kind of person was Taoist Mai Hua who could leave behind such a heaven-defying treasure? Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 486. These 3 plum blossom hairpins are simply the nemesis of the yin god. In a sense, it is not an exaggeration to describe them as artifacts. It also made him have a strong interest in Plum Blossom Taoist. If there was a chance in the script world in the future, he would really like to meet this Plum Blossom Taoist. Then he put the 3 hairpins back into the box and returned them to Maydu, and clearly explained the function of each hairpin to Maydu. You just gave it back to me like this. If he hadn't heard about the functions of these 3 hairpins, Maydu could still maintain his composure. However, after learning about the magical ability of these 3 hairpins, Maydu was not calm at all. He has been hearing stories from his fathers since he was a child about how magical his ancestor Mai Hua Taoist is, but as time goes by, he also feels that there may be exaggeration. For example, in the biography of Mai Hua, there is a story about Taoist Mai Hua who made a big fuss in Wushao City. Maydu has always wondered whether this was plagiarizing Sun Wukong. It wasn't until he heard about the power of these 3 hairpins that Maydu really felt that the stories described in Mai Hua's biography might not be all fabricated. But what made him uneasy was that Su Tong actually returned these 3 things to himself. Isn't it nice to kill people and seize treasures? Isn't it easy to force buy and sell? Don't blame him for speculating on Su Tong with such malicious thoughts, but the human heart is unpredictable. The uncles and uncles in the family have told him with bloody facts how terrible the greed of the human heart is. Moreover, to be honest, if these 3 plum blossom hairpins fell on my hand, they would be suspected of being covered in dust, even if I was a plum blossom descendant. He had even prepared for the worst in his mind. What he didn't expect was that Su Tong returned the thing to him generously, which really caught him off guard. Even he couldn't help but ask the question. What? Are you still charging me money? Su Tong looked at Maydu in shock. No, no, no. I mean. Maydu blushed and didn't know how to answer. Before Maydu could finish speaking, Su Tong slapped him on the back. Jijawai, like a girl, let's go, my 2 good brothers are still stupidly getting into the condom. Facing Su Tong's urging, Maydu didn't know what to say for a moment, so he could only lower his head and follow behind. In fact, Su Tong was tempted for a moment. Who wouldn't be moved by this thing? What's more, for myself, having this set of things is absolutely beneficial and harmless. But this is the treasure of his ancestors after all, not to mention that his ancestors were taken over by him. Taking over someone's ancestors and taking away their ancestral property, Su Tong couldn't do this. I lack everything except virtue. Well, there is really no shortage. When the 2 of them went back along the route they came from, they saw that the lights were already brightly lit outside the fake city of wasted death. The Miao clan chiefs who had been left behind by them had already led their men to catch up. However, the number of these strangers has obviously dropped a lot, at least 1/3 less than when they were above. Su Tong originally wanted to hide, but the high priest was also among the group of people. Now he couldn't hide anymore, so he simply walked out openly. Eh? You didn't go in. Everyone was surprised when they saw Su Tong and Maydu. They thought that the old man had left them far behind, but they didn't expect that they were still there. Facing the eyes of everyone, Su Tong only focused on the high priest. As for the others, he thought he was selectively ignored by Su Tong. Is it crazy? But in the eyes of everyone, this is taken for granted. If he had this ability, he would be crazier than him. Su Tong didn't speak because he didn't want to talk to these people. Those old guys who had a grudge against their masters could still hold back their tempers. But for other strangers, Su Tong has little patience. He lets them go freely without closing the door, which is enough for him. But Maydu, who was following behind, couldn't do this. He still nodded to everyone with a smile and said, "We accidentally got separated. We went around in a big circle and almost lost our way, and then we touched here. Oh. These strangers are not fuel-efficient lamps. Naturally, they will not believe what you Maydu said, but there is no need to expose them. Then let's go together. It just so happens that we won't be lonely on the road." The high priest standing behind said. Although this sounds strange, everyone has no objection. After all, with a great master like Su Tong holding the battle, they can rest assured. They even started to praise Su Tong one after another. The high priest is right. With Senior Su with us, we don't have to be afraid of any ghosts. The speaker is almost 50 years old. Senior Su is young, but he is already at the top of the world. He is truly a god. In my opinion, there are only a handful of people in the world who can compare with Senior Su. 2 generations of great masters in one school shows that Mr. Shui has vast magical powers and boundless magical power. When Su Tongren walked into the middle, he was instantly overwhelmed by all kinds of flattery sounds. Even Mei Du felt his scalp numb and goosebumps all over his body. I thought to myself, my dear fellows, you can become a great master even if you are so shameless. These people seem to have completely forgotten that they were clamoring to kill Su Tong before. If Senior Su doesn't dislike it, we are willing to do anything for Senior Su. Finally someone took the lead and wanted to bow down. As a result, Su Tong waved his sleeves lightly, and a soft force gently lifted the man up. He looked sideways at the longing eyes of everyone, with a smile on his face. In the expectant eyes of everyone, he faintly spit out 2 words. Words, disgusted. It wasn't loud, but everyone could hear it clearly. In an instant, everyone's smiles froze on their faces. They all said they would reach out to avoid hitting the smiling person, but as a result, they leaned forward and were beaten into pig heads. Just when the atmosphere suddenly turned freezing, Su Tong suddenly changed his voice and a bright smile appeared on his face. That's weird. How could I dislike you? Everyone is so polite. After hearing these words, everyone's tense faces immediately relaxed. It's rare for everyone to get together and overcome difficulties together. This is a rare fate that happens once in a century. We will definitely be blessed and share the hardships in the future. As soon as Su Tong said this, everyone immediately applauded. Only Dia, who was lying at the entrance of Su Tong Tang, shook her head and sighed, they are such a bunch of cuties, so easy to deceive. Let's go into the city. We don't have much time, so don't delay here. At this time, the high priest who was walking at the back spoke and urged. After hearing this, everyone seemed to finally remember that it had been an hour since they came in, but they were not even halfway through the journey, and the total time was only 4 hours. If they continued to waste it, they would never want to go back. Coupled with the addition of Grand Master Su Tong, everyone's steps suddenly became brisk and powerful, no longer as cautious as before. After passing through the arched stone door, you will see a building carved out of stone. Just as Gao Zhou and the others lamented before, these pavilion buildings not only restored the real houses one to one, but what is rare is that these houses are all carved out of stone. But there are still white lanterns hanging on the doors of every house. Instead of the word Fu on the door, there is the word Dian on the door. The gloomy feeling makes people feel uncomfortable walking here. High Priest, is this really a place for divine sacrifice? Why do I feel like this is more like a cemetery? Su Tong slowed down, deliberately approached the high priest who was walking behind, and asked casually. As soon as these words came out, the several Miao clan chiefs following the high priest all glared at Su Tong. Don't talk nonsense, this is the holy land of our people, and it has remained unchanged for thousands of years. Yeah, the style here seems different from the Miao people. When Su Tong said this, there were also smart people among the crowd who immediately noticed something was wrong. The high priest was wearing a mask and could not see his expression, but when he heard these words, the fingers holding the crutch trembled imperceptibly. But soon a raucous laughter was heard from behind the mask. Fellow Taoist has a very accurate vision. This is a cemetery. It is also the most painful place for us Miao people. The high priest's voice was hoarse. He first admitted that this was a large tomb, but then slowly said. In July of the 12th year of Kaiwan, Sima Qin Xinjiang of Zis who revolted against the donation. Emperor Xianzong of the Tang dynasty, Li Longji, ordered General Yang Xigzu, the prison guard, to recruit envoys for the Middle Gizhu Road and led 50,000 troops to suppress it. As a result, under the fire of war, our tribe also after being implicated, my vitality was severely damaged, and later I set up the governor's mansion in central Gizhu, and this tomb was the dam governor of central Gizhu, who took advantage of the fire and occupied it to build a large tomb. Mentioning this period of history, the high priest gritted his teeth. Su Tong couldn't help but be a little surprised when he heard this. He didn't expect that during the Ming dynasty, the voodoo sect, which still needed to be appeased by the court, was once suppressed to such an extent by the Tang dynasty. But when I think about the national power of the Tang dynasty at that time, I feel relieved. After all, the Tang dynasty at that time was still at the peak of its power. Just when Su Tong wanted to continue asking, a strange sound of gongs and drums suddenly came from a distance. Boom! 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 The sound came suddenly, and what made people feel even more weird was the cry that was accompanied by the sound of the gong, "The gate of hell is closed, and 100 ghosts walk at night." I wish everyone a happy new year and we will be better in 2022. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 487. Dong dong dong. The sound of the gong is getting louder and louder, but I don't know where it comes from. Everyone immediately became alert and carefully guarded their surroundings. Lamp. Two white lights in the distance lit up together, turning the world in front of them into day. Everyone's eyes had already adapted to the darkness, but they couldn't adapt to the sudden bright light, and they all narrowed their eyes. In the haze, I saw pedestrians approaching in the distance. When their eyes gradually adapted to the white light in front of them, they were surprised to find that they were actually in a bustling city. The houses and pavilions carved out of stone have now become what they look like in reality. Pedestrians and traffic were passing by, and except for the strange clothes on his body, they were almost the same as in reality. Is this real, or an illusion? Everyone was shocked and didn't even know whether it was a human or a ghost in front of them. This is. The world in front of him surprised Su Tong. With his current strength, he could naturally tell that everything in front of him was not false, everything was real. But how to do it, he couldn't explain for a while. He only felt that this place was very similar to another place, that is, Ghost Market. In the gap between the real world and the underworld, a place where humans and ghosts meet, a space is torn open with the help of huge resentment, connecting the upper world to the underworld, and the lower to the underworld. It is an extremely unique existence. The current world is not a ghost market, but to a certain extent, it is more advanced than a ghost market. It is a kingdom of the dead that is independent from the underworld. Can such a place actually appear in reality? Su Tong was really shocked. But when I thought about it again, I felt relieved. After all, even if the script world is weird and bizarre, it is created based on the projection of the real world. Maybe the real world in the past was weirder than the script world. It's just that, by doing this, it is obvious that he is trying to gain leverage in the underworld. Don't the gods in the underworld know that? If you knew it, would you let this place exist and not care? When all kinds of doubts came to mind, the aliens around him had gradually begun to adapt. Although the ghosts are scary, these pedestrians look no different from ordinary people. Looking at the peaceful and contented scenery, the guard in my heart gradually relaxes. What's this? At this time, a bold person actually walked up to the stall and looked at the things on the stall curiously. I saw a variety of exotic fruits placed on the stalls. These fruits are all filled with a unique fragrance. Once you take a whiff, you will feel light all over, and even have a feeling of ecstasy. The stall owner looked honest and honest. When these people asked, he explained, "These are Huangquan fruits, a specialty of our place. Eating one can help strengthen the soul. As he spoke, he enthusiastically picked up one and handed it over to them for a taste. Encourage Yuan Shen. Everyone was filled with suspicion, and some even denied the man's words on the spot. Yuan Shen is the innate nature, also known as Yuan Seeing. The Taoist secret method of improving the soul is regarded as a secret that has not been passed down. If this thing can improve the soul, it is a priceless treasure. If these fruits could strengthen the soul, they would have been snatched away by people long ago. How could they be seen by people like them? Everyone turned around to leave, feeling that there was most likely something wrong with this fruit. Su Tong followed the crowd, his eyes always scanning the seedling leaders and the high priest. Elder brother, look at what's over there. At this time, Mei Du, who was standing by the side, suddenly pulled Su Tong's arm and pointed. Su Tong looked at it and was immediately frightened. In front of the inconspicuous shop on the left, there were actually pieces of Mingqian money that were as bright as new. He even wondered if he had seen it wrong, but when he stepped forward and took a look, it turned out to be true. One after another, there were oily yellow notes with 4 big characters written on them, Netherworld Treasure Notes. Whether it was the color of the paper or the unique texture on it, Su Tong could tell at a glance that these things were genuine. With so many ghost notes neatly stacked in this place, Su Tong felt that it was a bit too dreamy. Please take a look, sir. These are genuine treasures. If you like them, feel free to take them. An old lady with a rosy complexion sat on a chair and said to Su Tong with a smile. Su Tong said nothing, but Mei Du couldn't help but asked, how do you plan to sell this thing? The old lady looked at Mei Du's body and said with a smile, this treasure is given to the destined person. If you like it, just take it. After hearing these words, Mei Du not only did not feel happy, but took a few steps back, not daring to get it. Su Tong looked at the money carefully and said suspiciously, old man, where did you get these things? There are quite a lot of them. The 8 immortals cross the sea and show their magical powers. 1,000 taels of gold are not for sale. I send old friends on the crossroads. Young man, if you like to take it, you can take it. Why bother me about the origin of this thing? The old lady had a calm look on her face, and she didn't seem to worry about whether Su Tong and the others would take it. Seeing this, Su Tong wanted to continue testing, but a sudden noise came from not far away, interrupting Su Tong's thoughts. Oh my God, get out of here. You, uncle, I discovered this first. The two of them fought in a ball, and at first they were still a little cautious. But after a few moments, they turned red and started to attack each other. When they looked at the object they were fighting for, it turned out to be an ancient sword. The ancient sword's the shape is extremely simple, and you can tell it is a sword at first glance. You see, if you don't take it, someone will take it. If you don't grab it, others will. Smart people will strike first, and those who realize later will never get ahead. The old lady sat on a chair and watched the fight with a smile on her face. But Su Tong and Mei Du ignored her, making her seem more like talking to herself. Hey, I obviously came here first with these fruits. Whatever you came first, you can't take it all by yourself. Everyone sees that everyone has a share. Some people on the side couldn't help but compete for the Huang Quan fruit. If this thing is real, eating it will definitely be beneficial to them. In front of the bookstore at the back, it has become bigger and more lively. There are a large number of martial arts secrets inside, and some people have even found their own lost secrets in them. There is absolutely no fake ones. Really, these things are real. Some people are overjoyed to find that the treasures here are all real things, and they are definitely not transformed by some ghost magic. The secret skills passed down by our family are recorded on them, and they will definitely not be fake. This is Shaolin Daruma boxing. It's unmistakable. The content above is almost the same as what I learned at the foot of Shaoxi Mountain. I only haven't learned the last few moves. Now I finally learned them all. One person held the boxing manual and studied it carefully, and actually found the trick that he had not broken through for a long time. This undoubtedly dispelled some of the vigilance in their hearts, so that those who were still watching couldn't help but join in, and said silently in their hearts, "I'll just take one, wrap it in my clothes, and hide it on my body, just in case it's true." Yes, everyone is happy, and if it's fake, you won't be afraid of hurting me. Most people think this way at first, but after they actually take it and see other treasures, they can't help but think. Take anyone, even two. Why don't you take one more? Yes, I'll take one more. I'll take the best one. Once desire is released, no one can control it. Looking everywhere else, everyone was going crazy, but there was no movement here. Occasionally, a few people looked over here, but when they saw Su Tong standing at the door, they immediately turned around and left in despair. Obviously, even though he was obsessed with the treasure, his rationality immediately gained the upper hand in the face of Su Tong. Now the old lady finally couldn't sit still. "Young man, you can go over there and have a look. There is an old man selling bamboo baskets. He has 3 treasures, all of which are rare treasures in the world. Young people, you can also go to the west and have a look. There is a peerless beauty in Xinglei Tower over there. Her smile will captivate the city, and her smile will captivate the country. Young people, young people, young people, if you don't want to buy something, don't stand here. Wouldn't you like it if you went shopping elsewhere? My legs hurt and I can't walk." Seeing that the old lady was getting anxious, Su Tong casually took out a piece of yellow paper, folded it into a bench and sat at the door of the store. He even folded one for Meidu, took out the melon seeds, and looked like he didn't intend to leave at all. "Young man, this is the kingdom of 10,000 years. There are countless rare treasures. Any item can last you a lifetime. This is a great opportunity. You will regret it if you waste your time sitting here." When she saw that the 2 people not only refused to leave, but were determined to block the door of her house, the veins on the old lady's forehead tensed up, but she still suppressed her anger as much as possible and spoke as calmly as possible. Su Tong yawned, with a look of lack of interest on his face. He didn't answer the old lady's words at all. Instead, he asked the old lady for advice. "Old man, where is Yin Yang Mountain?" "I don't know. If you don't want to buy it, just leave. Don't delay my business." The old lady was obviously really anxious, urging Su Tong to leave. But the more anxious the old lady became, the calmer Su Tong became and continued to ask, "Old man, how many years have you lived here? How come you don't even know where Yin Yang Mountain is?" "Elder brother, I think the old lady must know it. She just doesn't want to tell you. How about I help you ask?" As Meidu spoke, he cleared his throat, raised his pretty face, and asked the old lady the question again. This time the old lady didn't respond, but her eyes were already bloodshot. Because she saw that many people had started to compete, and even a shop selling Huan Quan fruit had been robbed, but her own business had not moved at all. "Don't worry, old man, no one from us here dares to steal your things." Su Tong looked at the old lady with half-squinted eyes, as if he was saying something very righteous. His righteous voice showed no sign of leaving, and he stayed here determinedly to ensure that the treasures in the old lady's stall, just leave it here intact, don't even think about touching it. You. The old lady pointed at Su Tong and Meidu with trembling hands. Her eyes turned red instantly. She changed her kind-hearted look and glared at Su Tong. "You ruined my business, I will fight with you." As he spoke, the skin on his face split open, and the criss-crossed fangs tore open from the middle of his face, revealing a bloody mouth. The big mouth opened to reveal a fishy smell, and there were twists and turns deep in the mouth. The moving heads were making a sharp roar. "What is this?" Meidu was shocked. Li Gui had seen it before, but he had never seen such a weird thing. It's a beast from the yin and yang dao. Su Tong recognized it at a glance. The origin of this thing was that when the fool stood alone against the gate of yin and yang dao, he had seen this mutated evil ghost through the crack in the door. I just didn't expect to see it here. You ruined my business. You have to stay and pay for it with your life. The heads deep in the bloody mouth screamed in unison, and their bodies twisted into a beast-like appearance. The whole body was filled with a putrid smell. They stepped back, whipping up a terrifying strong wind and rushing towards Su Tong. Facing the attack of the White Walkers, Mei Du instinctively wanted to dodge, but when he saw Su Tong behind him, he didn't even have the desire to take action. Just with a thought, the big fat man appeared out of the air, and his dense tentacles instantly threw him in the air. The White Walkers were entangled into a rice dumpling, leaving only the head with a bloody mouth outside. Immediately, the big fat tentacle waved in the air and hit the ground fiercely. Boom, there was a huge shaking sound. Everyone was startled, and they all looked back, looking at the big fat man who appeared out of thin air with horrified expressions. But after everyone saw the fat paper body, they immediately thought of Su Tong Kimon's identity. He is an expert at playing with paper, not to mention a great master. It is not surprising to make such a puppet out of paper. But only Mei Du knew that Big Fatty was by no means what everyone thought, he was just a paper man. However, everyone's attention was quickly attracted by the monster wrapped around the big fat tentacles. When they saw the terrifying appearance of the White Walkers clearly, everyone was shocked. They had never seen such a weird thing before. Could it be that, these people, are all? Someone swallowed, moved back, and finally remembered where this place was. He glanced sideways at the pedestrians around him, and found that these people were also staring at him at the moment, with increasingly weird expressions on their faces. Crack. The old man selling Huang Quanguo slowly raised his head. The skin on his face cracked open like ceramics, and a tentacle like an earthworm came out along the gap, twisting in the air. Kaka kaka. There were more and more cracking sounds. The eyes of those ghosts who looked like normal people just now gradually began to look ferocious. Run! A shrill scream was shouted out, and in an instant the whole world in front of him seemed to explode. With the sound of shattering explosions, all kinds of strange ghosts revealed their true colors from their original shells. Ink-colored tentacles surged out of the body and instantly pushed an alien to the ground. Then the tentacles opened, revealing a rotten head, and grinned with a sharp laugh, "Start paying the bill." There was a bit of a lag today. I wrote more than half of it before deleting and rewriting it, so it was a lot slower. I will update it first tonight. I will take a day off tomorrow to sort out my thoughts on the development of the plot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 489. Ah! Along with the shrill screams, a fight began. No, it should be a massacre. To a certain extent, these strangers can be regarded as today's first-class masters. They can deal with ordinary ghosts with ease. But, these are not ordinary wandering ghosts, but those things that wander in the yin and yang path and have long since become another form, the strange ghosts. Such things can only appear in the yin and yang dao, but the strange thing is that they actually appear in reality. Moreover, even the ghosts in the underworld would have a headache when encountering things like the White Walkers. They generally have low IQs and behave more like wild beasts. Su Tong was shocked that these ghosts not only had strong minds, but also knew how to disguise themselves as ordinary wandering ghosts, and he didn't even see the flaw. This shows that someone is not only controlling them, but also training these white ghosts. If this is the case, this Jui Ghost King has gone too far. If the Yinko underworld knows about this matter, it will definitely not let him go. However, this guy has existed since the Ming dynasty to this day. This matters, something is wrong. Help, help. Seeing that he was no match for these terrifying alien ghosts, a stranger struggled and rushed towards Su Tong. He wanted to ask Su Tong to save his life, but he also wanted to divert trouble to the east. Mei Du couldn't bear to take action, but Su Tong grabbed his arm and said, "Let's go." After saying "let's go," the big fat man behind him stretched out his tentacles, rolled up the two of them, and quickly transformed into a ghost form. He moved in a flash, and was far away in the next second. As a result, the stranger jumped in vain on the spot. Seeing that there was no hope for help, the resentment in his heart burst out uncontrollably. He pointed at Su Tong and cursed sternly, "Asshole, you can't help me, what kind of master are you? I won't let you go even if I'm a ghost." There was not only one person who cursed, there were also people who found that the leader of the seedlings and the high priest were not attacked by the White Walkers, and wanted to run towards them. As a result, what greeted them was a barrage of crossbow arrows. The arrow of the crossbow has been stringed, and the arrowhead is filled with a dark red luster, which is obviously quenched with poison. This time they were dumbfounded. They knew that the seedlings were tough, but they didn't expect that they even had such contraband in their hands. Now they were unable to move forward or retreat, and no one would doubt whether these seedlings dared to shoot arrows. They could only bite the bullet and turn around to fight these strange ghosts, but how could flesh and blood be the opponent of these monsters? In just a moment, they had already suffered heavy casualties, dozens of people, and most of them were killed or injured in the blink of an eye. Su Tong watched with cold eyes and found that after these strange ghosts killed each other, they often sucked out the other person's soul, but they did not swallow the soul directly, but held it in their mouths, not knowing what they were doing. These people are so hateful. Mei Du sat on Big Fatty's shoulder and couldn't help frowning when he saw this, and his eyes became evil. Under the slogan of giving away treasures, they tricked everyone into coming down with them, which was obviously to let these people die. As if aware of the two people's gazes, the high priest turned sideways and looked at the two of them. Even through the thick mask, the high priest's gaze still made the two of them feel very uncomfortable. Boom! At this time, the gong sounded again, and the surrounding ghosts all stopped as if they had heard some order. Then they ignored the strangers who had not yet been killed, turned around, and stood neatly in two teams, facing walk deeper into the street. The other strangers who were lucky enough to survive had just escaped death, but before they had time to rejoice, the sound of the gong became more rapid, and soon someone noticed something was wrong with their body. "Wait for me." Some people were shivering all over, their bodies unconsciously lying on the ground, and their limbs becoming stiff. Immediately afterwards, a low voice was heard, "Come quickly." As soon as the sound reached my ears, I saw wisps of fluorescent light pouring out from its Tianling point, converging into two spots of light, one red and one blue, and then quickly flew deep into the street and disappeared. The soul leaves the body. Su Tong's expression changed slightly, and he couldn't help but think of the soul of the old man of the Gao family who was taken away. However, he and Mei Du did not feel anything unusual. They couldn't help but look at the Shen Miao clan leaders and found that not only them, but also those who could restrain themselves and did not take the so-called treasures, also suffered no harm at all. Influence. It seems that these affected people are all greedy and have taken things they shouldn't have. No wonder these treasures were allowed to be taken away by them in vain, and it turned out that the price was their souls. So, the old man of the Gao family must have had this reason. No, keep your mind close and protect your soul. Other strangers also noticed that something was wrong, and they all recited their mental methods silently in order to stabilize their souls. But when the gong sounded, each of them felt their hearts turbulent and their whole bodies shivered. With the cry in his ears, the souls suddenly couldn't hold on any longer, and flew out of the parkway holes above their heads, turning into bits of light, and flew deep into the streets together with the strange ghosts. "Follow me." The high priest raised his crutch, and with the support of two girls, he urged the surrounding seedlings to quickly follow behind these ghosts. Seeing this, Su Tong naturally did not fall behind, and sat on the big fat shoulder to follow. As for those Jianghu people who had their souls taken away, they looked embarrassed at this moment. They looked at the team leaving and then looked at the entanglement behind them. Some people chose to leave just now. No matter what, the treasures in their hands are real, and they are still in their hands at this moment. Leaving with these treasures, they could be considered a fruitful return this time. But if a soul is taken away, if it cannot be recovered, the consequences will be endless. The loss of the soul not only means that there is no possibility of breakthrough, but also that the soul will not be able to enter the underworld after death, and the fate will be worse than a lonely ghost. Awful. After struggling for a moment, some people chose to leave and continue to follow these seedlings, which might not even save their lives. With these treasures in hand, if you leave here, you may be able to enjoy the prosperity of the world for decades. As for what will happen next, it will not be too late to talk about it by then. It's just that there are only a few people who think this way. Even those with a little bit of knowledge know that although they hold heavy treasures, they will inevitably die. Even the Grand Master will not be an exception. If he can't get his soul back, he will die early. What difference does it make if you die later? So after a dozen people chose to leave, others chose to follow. After everyone crossed the street, the strange ghost suddenly disappeared. What came into view was vast water vapor. When people looked carefully through the steam, a hill full of hot springs appeared in front of them. The hill is not high, probably only 100 meters high. This height is almost the same as Yingyuan Peak in Bamang Mountain, but it is much larger than Yingyuan Peak. The mountain is covered with large and small pools, and hot spring water pours down from the top, crisscrossing these pools. The pool fills up to form a natural hot spring. Everyone stood at the bottom of the mountain and could clearly see a temple being built on the top of the mountain, majestic in the white mist. What the hell is this place? How could anyone build a temple here? Isn't it said to be a big tomb? Could it be that the tomb is buried here? Water is the most taboo in Feng Shui. Bodies will rot when exposed to water, so why would a tomb be built here? There were many knowledgeable people present. Looking at the hot spring mountain in front of them, they felt that no one would build a tomb on it anyway. Su Tong and Mei Du jumped off Big Fatty's body. Su Tong patted Big Fatty's belly. "You go back first, this place is inconvenient for you. The water vapor here is too heavy, even a fat man in ghost state will feel very uncomfortable." The fat man nodded honestly and immediately disappeared in front of the two of them. "Headmaster, look at those flowers." At this time, Dia jumped out from the entrance of the hall, quickly picked a flower with a vermilion fruit from the mountain and handed it to Su Tong. "This is the antibacterial fruit. It is said that it can only be found in the yin and yang dao. It is the main food of the White Walkers. There are so many of them here. I think there is a high probability that the White Walkers are kept here." Su Tong casually threw the fruit into the entrance of the hall, and saw a round little guy jumping up at the entrance, holding it in his mouth and eating it. It was a severely shrunk fortune. Speaking of getting rich, it is also a native creature in the yin and yang dao. These things are exactly what he loved to eat in the past. Dia jumped up slightly, and her jade feet landed lightly on the entrance of the hall. She turned around and sat on the threshold, whispering to Su Tong. "Headmaster, I once heard from my ancestors that the fungus fruit is a rotten thing, and it can only be grown from rotten corpses." Hearing this, Su Tong was shocked and instantly understood what Dia meant. The thing that looked like a mountain in front of him turned out to be a rotting corpse. Someone saw a boundary monument under a dead tree, with 3 large characters written in official script on it, Yin Yang Mountain. There is also a line of small words on the side of the boundary monument. Someone read, "There is no shadow of me in the three realms, and there is no name for me in the underworld." Everyone in the world knows the suffering in the underworld. Why not escape into my door, live in the immortal realm of immortality, and be free in the three realms and five elements? So arrogant. When everyone saw this line of small words, they couldn't help but look at each other. That's right, I really think of myself as a god. Some people scoffed, thinking that this was just pretentious. If someone could really do this, how come people had never heard of the slightest rumor? You actually compare yourself to Yin Cao. How courageous is this? I'm really not afraid of people going out and sending a copy of the ghost note down, so that someone can take care of him. Mingti is a way for practitioners to inform the underworld. If they are burned at a specific time, it is said that they can go directly to the Hall of Hell. Of course, whether one can reach Yama directly depends on whether the person has a certain level of cultivation and reputation. It is definitely not possible for ordinary people, but if you are a cultivator, a wealthy and powerful person, or even an ancient royal family, it will be fine. According to rumors, a handwritten letter from Taoist Plum Blossom can not only reach the Hall of Hell, but if serious, it can even alert Emperor Yin Cao. Of course, these are all digressions. Generally speaking, as long as someone files a complaint about this matter, it will definitely alarm the underworld, so everyone is a little disapproving and thinks that the above sentence is exaggerated. Only Su Tong and Mei Du looked at each other. Yes, these strangers all knew the stakes involved, but this Jui Ghost King has not only been here since the Ming Dynasty, but also has no one until now. Tidy. Is there a whistleblower missing? Su Tong guessed that there were only two possibilities: either there was someone down there, or it was a real giant crocodile that even Yin Cao was afraid of. In contrast, Su Tong prefers the former. Look, someone is coming down the mountain. At this moment, everyone suddenly discovered that a woman was walking down the mountain amid the clouds and mist. The woman was wearing a long skirt like that of the ancients. Her long black hair flowed in the wind, revealing a beautiful face, and her huge eyes swept across her eyes. Clear and traceless, like a fairy in a painting. Exuding a kind of natural beauty inside and out, the woman flew down lightly and stood in front of everyone. She first bowed to everyone, and then said, "Everyone, Your Majesty invites you." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 490. The woman's voice was as clear as a bell, making her ears feel tingling. What's more, although the woman's appearance does not make people feel stunning at first sight, she is the kind of person who becomes more and more attractive the more you look at her, and the more you look at her, the more you like her. However, Su Tong saw a different scene with the help of Minji and Kimin. The woman's face had long been rotten, the original color of her clothes could no longer be seen, and there were stains stained with corpse water everywhere, which was disgusting. Upon hearing this, the Miao clan chiefs and high priests lifted the coffin and walked up the mountain path. At this time, Su Tong suddenly noticed something. When he looked back, he saw his mistress looking at him with a smile. She glanced at the dead tree beside her with her big eyes, and followed the seedlings up the mountain. Go. What on earth is this old woman doing here? Seeing the mistress twisting her small waist, looking exactly like the snake spirit in the movie Green Snake, Su Tong couldn't help but start to think about it. Old ladies. Mei Du looked at him with a confused look, followed his gaze, and couldn't help but curled his lips and joked in a low voice, "Elder brother, we haven't reached the daughter's kingdom yet, and besides, you are not Tang Santang. Oh, you know a hammer." Su Tong rolled his eyes at him and winked. Jixiang shook his body at the entrance of the hall, sneaked out and ran towards the dead tree that the teacher's wife had just looked at. After a while, Jixiang took it in his mouth. A note came back. The note was opened and 6 words were written on it: "This place is dangerous, move quickly." Seeing the words on the note, Su Tong sighed, and then stuffed it into his pocket. He wanted to leave, but could he? Not to mention whether the old man of the Gao family can be saved, there is still no news about Chang Wogu and Gao Zhou, so they can't leave even if they want to. But this gave him a wake-up call. It's not safe in front, please leave as soon as possible. Su Tong whispered in Meidu's ear that this guy had no restrictions and was quite strong. There was absolutely no problem in leaving, and there was no need to risk going up the mountain with him. Elder brother, master is in trouble, how can I, Lao Shat, ignore it? Meidu spread his hands and said in an old-fashioned manner. In fact, he also knew that this matter had nothing to do with him. He had to leave now and he could be considered safe. However, Su Tong had just returned his treasure to him and took good care of himself along the way. This made him encounter some difficulties. If you have to run away, how can you be friends in the future? Besides, if he could find such a place, he would also like to see what the 9E Underworld Ghost King looked like. Seeing that Meidu didn't leave, Su Tong couldn't help laughing, pinching his throat and lowering his voice. Okay, Junior brother Shat, let's go in together and see what this Jui Underworld King looks like. Elder brother please. Junior brother Shat, please. The two of them were having such a great time that everyone present had goosebumps all over their bodies and were embarrassed to the point of shame, but Su Tong and Meidu didn't care about that. The happiest thing is having someone play with you. As for what you play or what others think, it doesn't matter. Having fun is the best thing. After Su Tong and Meidu went up the mountain, the others were embarrassed for a moment. They knew with their toes that it was easier to go up the mountain than to go back down, but they were unwilling to go back home. Hey, why do you want to take away my soul? Someone came forward and asked the woman directly. Hearing this, the woman pulled up her long sleeves to cover half of her face, and let out a giggle. Then she said, trading in the market is about coming and going. You have so many treasures on your body, why do you need to ask this little woman? But no one said that these things require our souls to exchange for them. You didn't declare it in advance. This is fraud. Faced with the woman's explanation, no one was willing to accept it. Even the 250-year-old in the crowd didn't know who started to make trouble. They wished they could apply all the consumption laws from outside, so they just shouted that they would return the goods without any reason within 7 days. The woman's face gradually became colder. One gain and one loss are natural cycles. There is no advantage in the world that can be taken for nothing. Didn't you think about it when you got the treasure? If you dare to make trouble unreasonably, don't blame me for being ruthless. As soon as the woman's voice fell, she saw the surrounding spring water boiling, and the strange ghosts that had just disappeared started to poke their heads out of the water. Now everyone fell silent instantly. For fear of offending the woman, some people were unwilling to do so and stepped forward cautiously. That young lady, look, if we return the things now, can we return our souls? Okay, go up the mountain to find my king. My king is the most fair and just. As long as you pay the corresponding price, he will never bully you. When everyone heard the woman's words, they didn't know what to say. Up the mountain. Some people struggled for a while, but finally gritted their teeth and decided to go up the mountain to see who had taken away their souls. If there was a chance, they might be able to get their souls back. Someone took the lead and walked up the mountain. Except for a few people who chose to leave, others followed suit. Walking up the rugged path, you can see many strange-shaped hot spring pools. If it were any other place, this would be a tourist attraction. At least there would be no need to build a hot spring resort. Along the way, Meidu did not forget to suggest to Su Tong that after waiting for this matter, they could go to the resort at the foot of Mount Imei to soak in the hot springs. At that time, you can also ask 2 girls to accompany you, drink during the day, and relax in the hot spring sauna at night. Su Tong actually has little interest in so-called girls. In his heart, There are thousands of beautiful skins, but there are too few interesting souls. But drinking in the sauna is also a good idea. While the two were talking, the temple in front of them gradually became clearer. At this moment, the temple door was wide open, and two cute and lovely boys and girls were standing at the door. After seeing Su Tong and Meidu, the girl was stunned for a moment and said in surprise, "There is actually a great master." But soon the expressions of the two boys returned to normal and they said, "Welcome distinguished guests, my king has set up a banquet, please come in." Su Tong looked up and down, took out his mobile phone from his pocket, found Gao Zhou's photo and sent it to him. "This is my friend. They should have arrived earlier than us. I wonder where they are now." As he spoke, Su Tong did not forget to put 2 guiding coins into their hands. However, when the two of them looked at the photo, they shook their heads and said, "I haven't seen it before. Never seen them. They were clearly walking in front of us, how could you not have seen them?" Meidu stepped forward and asked. But the two boys still shook their heads and said that they had never seen it before. This was a bit strange. Normally, Gao Zhou and Chang Wogu were carrying a coffin and an old man, and their speed would never be slow. There was no reason for them to be left behind. "Elder brother, do we still want to go in?" Meidu turned back to look at Su Tong. Su Tong looked back at the mountain trail behind him, thought for a moment and said, "Come in. If we don't look for it, they will come looking for it. Let's go in and have a look before talking." Although they don't know what happened to Gao Zhou and the others, the source of all problems is here, and they can't get around this level no matter what. Immediately after the two entered the temple gate, they walked through the corridor under the leadership of a child, and came face to face with a huge stone wall. There are 8 humanoid statues on the huge stone wall, each of them looking extremely painful. The expression of the statue is lifelike. Although there is no sound, the painful visual feeling still hits the face, making people unconsciously feel a strange feeling of empathy. 9 walls of bitterness. Su Tong saw the words 9 bitter walls written on the steel next to the stone wall, and wondered in his heart what the connection between the name of King Ju Mingui and the 9 sufferings was. Old people, sick people, parting, hatred. Meidu watched the expressions of these 8 people and felt carefully, but he could only name 4 kinds of pain. When Su Tong saw this, he spoke for him and said, "Greedy, helpless, unable to love, unable to hold on, nothing. None." Meidu looked up at Su Tong in confusion. "I don't understand what the last nothing means." "Nothing?" Meidu said tentatively. "No, that's a. It's unspeakably painful." Su Tong looked serious. He had to bear this kind of suffering silently. In the past, he couldn't figure it out at once, but when he looked at the vacant space, he couldn't help but think of his master. Take the destiny and bring about disaster and calamity. It takes one person to bring an end to the old era, but one has to bear the consequences alone. He was ostracized and hated by everyone in the world, and was destined to die in painful torture. There was not even a coffin after his death, and there was not even a ringer class to bury him. If the country had not implemented the cremation system, and the newly established crematorium was not under the control of the old era, I am afraid that Master Song would not have been able to cremate him even if he wanted to. The master can only endure the suffering without even having anyone to talk to. This is the last suffering. Hey, you can actually guess it. A girl walked out from behind the stone wall with a black cat in her arms, staring at Su Tong with wide eyes. The king once said that there is still relief from the first 8 sufferings, but the 9th suffering cannot be solved. Those who suffer from this must have, although the Bodhisattva's heart and diamond method is not that of the Buddha, it is better than the Buddha. Very few people know about it. I didn't even guess it back then. How did you know? The girl was only 11 or 12 years old. She was slim and well behaved, with 2 red ribbons in her hair. When she came over, the boy who was responsible for guiding her was so frightened that she knelt on the ground and shivered. I said, I have experienced it, do you believe it? Su Tong looked at the girl with the help of his life ikumen. He didn't know the result. He was shocked when he saw that this 11 or 12-year-old girl turned out to be a living person.